A bit late on the video today, but we did have some pretty severe weather several times, so bear with me on that. But I have a mock for you today, another Invasion from Below machine, this time a biped, and I'm pretty happy with how it has come out so far, because this is actually a machine for Stringer. So Stringer is a character that we did not actually get to see, unfortunately, from Invasion from Below, but I'm pretty happy with how I was able to complete this machine as it stands. We will be seeing a Stringer figure over in studio, and I plan, hopefully, to actually print some of the pieces that I designed for Stringer specifically. But this is the model in hand, and I'm very happy with how it looks. First off, it does have these claws on the far side, which are reminiscent of the Thunder set, which came out all the way back in, I believe, 2011. However, I actually would swap those out for smaller claws. I feel like this is two very large, dedicated weapons, and obviously by this point, these pieces were no longer being produced. So something a bit smaller, maybe similar to the claws that were used in Savage Planet, or even used in this very Wave on Crystal Beast, I think would work and feel a little bit more appropriate for this figure. That said, I'm very happy with the design of the figure, and I actually opted for trans dark blue as the secondary color. However, of course, the canopy or seat is also orange on the inside there, and there is some trans light blue as well. So definitely a decent amount of colors. But on one side, I have this sort of like sound maker. I don't really know what I want to call this weapon yet. I do like the aesthetic of it though, and we will see how it has changed in terms of colors in studio in a moment. But since Stringer is sort of a sound-based character, this actually makes a lot of sense for me. I picture the beasts from Invasion from Below as being these sort of underground creatures. So being able to like maybe take this sound maker and blast it into the ground might help to deter them, to get them to either crawl away from the area or maybe force them out of the ground and up to the surface to be captured, right? So I figure that's a really good idea. And of course, with the smaller claws, it'd be a little bit more nimble, a little bit easier for it to pick up the actual jumpers themselves. The build on this is actually pretty similar to the build on the jet machine, so there's not a whole lot different going on here. Really nothing remarkable in terms of the body build itself, because it's just a good solid platform to build off of, to be honest. However, in this case here, we do have double joints in the arms on both sides, so yeah, he's definitely going to have more pieces than a typical machine would, but at the same time, I don't necessarily see him being above the $15 range. I really think it just depends on what LEGO would be willing to do, because yet again, we know that Invasion from Below was the final wave for Hero Factory. Along with that, there's this sort of wire or tube. You could see that as whatever you want. Maybe it's a cooling system for these speakers demanding a great amount of power, or maybe it is the power supply itself. I wanted to do both blue and red, but since this doesn't come in, I think, solid blue, and the other one doesn't come with this transparent cover, it looked a little bit off, so I just opted for this one instead. Though, you could just as easily use rigid hoses, and that would work out just fine. So, let's go ahead and hop on over to Studio very quickly so you can see it. I've got one more surprise in there as well. Actually, kind of two surprises. But of course, if you like this type of content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out. I'm going to set this aside so I don't knock it over, and let's hop on over. So this right here is Stringer and his machine. Give me a moment in studio because it stopped responding. There we go. Usual studio stuff. But you can see I actually designed prints for Stringer here himself as well. And of course, if you're somebody that prefers the orange color scheme or the yellow color scheme, I did actually create a yellow version of this as well, or Keith Orange, close enough. But I opted for the blue one here for obvious reasons. Since the seat on the inside is orange, I also made the arrow orange on it as well. And that's just a design I came up with in a notebook yesterday. Instead of doing like screws on the side here, which many of the shells feature, I opted for little tiny speakers. I thought that was a really cool little idea. So the little sound waves are coming out of the side, and then I kind of like roughed up the edges of it. Although I think I could have gone a little bit harder on roughing up those edges, very similar to the Stormer shell, which has the edges here kind of blurred into the shell, which I really like for that character. And for this having the Soundwave aesthetic, I figured the vibrations would make it, you know, fizzle and be just a little jagged around the edges. So I really loved the idea of that, the concept of that. This would come with a red jumper with a blue shell because we did not actually get one of those officially from LEGO. So both this machine and Nex's machine would both both come with red jumpers, blue shells. But speaking of Nex, we gotta show some love to him as well. I actually just apprehended, if you will, his helmet for the very first time as well. So I actually have it on hand here. Don't know how well you can see that, but I've never actually had it in hand before. It's a pretty cool looking piece overall, though the things coming off the side are not my taste, but still. With that said, you get the Stringer armor with the yellow instead of Keith Orange, and then Nex gets a sort of circuitry kind of style, but I wanted to keep it pretty basic here. I think I could have gone a little bit thicker on the lines, and it's very easy to fix this stuff up if I need to. Opted for the red on the arrows, but if I'm remembering right, my brain is telling me that Nex used to have green eyes, which I think is true, so I feel like I should have gone green with the arrows. It's not important that the arrows match the eye color, but it's a nice little nod to previous iterations of the character. And of course, Nex has his miniature helmet here as well, which is just another design that I did quite a while ago back on Part Designer. You'll see with Nex too, I wanted to do something a little bit different, a little bit fancy for him. So I actually went with a white skeleton torso instead of black. All of the other characters obviously have the black torso, and so since Nex is oftentimes depicted with orange and white, not every time of course, I wanted to do something different for him. So I opted for the white torso on him. I thought about doing something very similar with Stringer as well, but I'm just not familiar with all the colors that the torso is available in for the skeletons specifically, and I didn't want to go too far out of the way with it. That said, of course, Nex is going to look just fine with a black torso here as well, so, you know, no harm, no foul, right? So I'm really happy with how each of these turned out. Nex has the gunmetal armor, Stringer has the silver armor, and silver on his machine for the most part, but you'll see that on the shells, I opted for gunmetal for Stringer and a size 4 shell. That's actually very similar to Breeze, who also gets the same size shell and also gunmetal as well. I just didn't want her being the only one, the odd one out, as I mentioned, because, I don't know, it felt natural for at least more than one character to get shells of different sizes. Something that I want to do as well for this sort of theme, which I believe I mentioned in a previous video, is I want to try and make crawlers for each of the characters and biped machines for each of the characters, meaning that each character in theory would get 2 machines in total. That's obviously a decent amount of work, and I imagine you could start to run out of ideas pretty quickly, so there's definitely going to be some stuff that is sort of rehashed, but again, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? As long as the builds come together, feel appropriate for the amount of parts, for the sort of price point that I'm aiming for, and of course, look good while representing the character, then I'm pretty happy, and I don't feel like it's necessary to change it per se. So definitely a fun activity in and of itself, and I sat down yesterday, I don't know, near midnight or something, literally just could not sleep again. And yeah, just sketched out some designs for these shells because I really wanted to get something special done for these. So with that said, if you want to get a hold of these shell pieces and these helmet pieces as well, I'll try posting them on the Discord tonight. And of course, you can just download them for free. If you have Studio, then you can open them up. I can't imagine that they're going to be ready for printing specifically. I am going to have to go in and kind of fix them up for that, but I haven't worried about that yet. Haven't been able to mess with the printer with all the storms and stuff lately. So of course, if you want to join in on the conversation, you can do so in the comments below, and make sure to like and subscribe. Again, it really helps out the channel. It tells YouTube that you want to see more content like this. And of course, it's the biggest possible thanks that you can give to me, and it's free. So hey, it's like all wins, all up and down. Anyway, you can also join the conversation over on the Discord, where you'll find these files, as well as Instagram and Patreon. It completely fell out of my mind. If you want to help support the channel and get some perks, and I'll see you all in the next one. Take care.